Hi, I'm Anna.
And I'm Delia.
And this is Pop-arazzi, the podcast dedicated to everything pop culture, featuring our most passionate opinions and the greatest guests around. And back to our next episode. Today we will be discussing every New Yorker's favorite place, Broadway.
Today, we have a Broadway expert joining us to give us their insights into the world of Broadway. We will be delving into some of their favorite musicals and the influence of shows and the undisclosed topics of Broadway.
Please welcome Scola member and poet Tenley Newton.
Yay, Tenley!
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Thank you for joining us.
This is a really exciting episode for me as a Broadway enthusiast.
As a person who has seen Broadway shows. Exciting.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, so
we thought that we would start with you just going through your favorite musicals and she had us pick three. She picked three for us to research and look at.
So I picked three musicals, and that is Hamilton, Dear Evan Hansen, and Waitress. And I think we should start with Hamilton just because it's the most well-known. I would say in 7th grade, I think a big problem with how theater kids were treated was because, there was just such a big number of fans for Hamilton. I think that kind of caused a rift between people who didn't want to like it because it was, quote, different. And I guess there was just such a big following that it overwhelmed people.
Yes, I actually agree with that. I have seen Hamilton. I saw it, but I was never obsessed with it, and I didn't really understand the obsession. So then when it was during history class, when someone would be like, oh my god, Hamilton.
Stop, I still do that.
I still do that also.
That definitely annoyed me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, well, I saw Hamilton 3 times in 3 different locations, and I loved it every time. But that's just me. I'm very mainstream.
Yes. Okay, but for those of you who don't know, Tenley, would you like to explain just the overall general plot?
So I guess in a broad term, it's kind of the overall life of Alexander Hamilton when he comes to New York. And as a 7th grader who knew nothing about American history, I really can't tell you why I was so drawn to this. I think just because it was catchy and there was hip-hop involved, I just kind of got into it. And I think that my biggest flex probably in my life will be that I saw it with the original cast.
Yeah, that's so jealous.
A huge deal, yeah.
Didn't you meet one of them?
Yeah, I met Aaron Burr and Lafayette.
Leslie Odom Jr.?
Yeah, Leslie Odom Jr.
Goodness.
And I met Daveed Diggs, too, which was awesome.
He was on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Daveed Diggs is my favorite character. Thomas Jefferson's my favorite character in that show.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's funny because I don't think I was as mature as I should have been to be following that so closely.
Oh my gosh.
If that makes any sense.
Tenley used to scream the song Burn, which is about Eliza Hamilton getting cheated on. And we would be 12 singing Burn in the back of her dad's car, and it was just
yeah, I really didn't think I understood the context of a lot of things in the 7th grade. I went for my 13th birthday, which was awesome. But one of the interesting topics that I was thinking about was Lin-Manuel Miranda, and I think that's a big thing to talk about.
Oh, my goodness. Okay,
we'll go back to that.
Yeah, we will come back to that. And so, yeah, like I said, I have seen Hamilton before, and I enjoyed it. I enjoy most musicals, and I enjoyed this. I just wasn't really sure why it got all the hype it did, which is one of our talking points. We will be discussing for each whether or not the musical deserves the hype or not.
Yeah, because Tenley picks some mainstream musicals,
yeah,
so people really knew them.
I honestly think that in the gist of things, Hamilton is technically the best I've seen, and I'll explain that a little bit, just because I think the fact that it's sung through completely is very, very different from a lot of musical. Yeah.
I did enjoy that aspect, and I definitely think it makes it so that people who can't afford to see Broadway shows can listen to the music of the show and still be able to understand exactly what's happening.
And them putting that on Disney Plus, that was just such a gift during quarantine.
I never watched it.
Oh, you have to watch it with fresh eyes now, because I just had a very different experience watching that now. Who I thought was the villain or that kind of aspect then is very different from what I think now.
Honestly, I have more hate for Lin-Manuel and Miranda.
I do too.
So I feel that definitely played into it.
Yes. And like I also didn't really know much about that when I saw it. Okay. And so I was definitely, I don't know if it deserved the hype. Okay, so like we were saying before the technical difficulties that we experienced, I'm not sure that Hamilton deserves the hype.
It does.
It does.
I saw it and I was like, okay, I saw it like a little bit after it first came out, so it wasn't the original cast anymore, but it was still like when it was like really big and like everyone was like, oh my god, it's so good, it's so good. And I saw it and I just kind of thought, this is sort of like every other musical. Like, we've seen the spinning stage before. We've seen...
No, you haven't.
But we have.
No, what other musical have you seen the spinning stage? Like, the Satisfied Rewind version?
I literally can't remember, but...
It's like new. It was like new to Hamilton.
You're telling me that no other musical in like before the year 2015 did a spinning stage?
Pippin did it. Pippin did do a spinning
forget
stage.
The spinning stage. I feel like it's not about like the technical aspects.
Okay, and also I did not like... I'll be discussing more on this later, but I did not like how they displayed Hamilton as more of the protagonist when in actuality he was a bit of an antagonist.
I totally agree
Aaron
with that.
Burr did not deserve the hate that he got.
Also, yeah, definitely. Aaron Burr, I think that's why Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote it from Aaron Burr as the narrator. Like, I think he wrote it as him narrating and showing the good side of Aaron Burr because it does go down as like a villain in the history books because he killed Hamilton.
Yeah, but it's like I'm the fool that shot him. I don't know. I just...
Yeah.
Well, I
but
think
like
Lin-Manuel in general, like, there's some problems there, and I think that him starring in his own musical that he wrote when technically a lot of people could have played that role much better.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw it in Chicago. I saw it in Chicago with like a whole different cast, and he was better than
Totally.
I like don't get it because like, okay, Lin-Manuel Miranda, obviously he's very talented. He wrote the whole thing, but like he's not that great of a singer.
He's a lot better in his other musical, which
In
is
the Heights.
In the Heights. He's a lot better in that.
Okay, but then still, why would you cast yourself? So
No,
he
I
was
totally
casting-
agree with
He
you.
was casting all people of color. He was the director and writer. Obviously, he's gonna get a lot of fame from it anyway. But like,
I don't know.
he was gonna cast a person
feel
of
like this
color
is a
who
controversial
probably
topic.
deserved.
I think his talent is his writing. I think
Yes,
that
definitely.
the entire cast made the musical aspect of it what it was supposed to be. Like, he didn't contribute to that part. He contributed to the writing.
Oh,
Yeah, I agree.
not at all. Okay.
Yes.
Should we move on to the next musical?
Tenley,
Oh,
would you like
yes.
to describe your second musical?
Yes, I would. So the second musical I chose was Dear Evan Hansen, and this is a big one for me. If you knew me in the 8th grade, just pretend you didn't, because I don't know what was going on there. But this musical, I don't really know how I stumbled upon this one, but it was just very new at the time, and it was trying to relate to a lot of kids and a lot of feelings that, like, of hopelessness and things like that and fitting in. So I think I was attracted to it for that reason. And the plot of the musical itself
It's really dark.
Really dark. Like, I'm starting to figure that out now. I saw it in the 8th grade, and I think a lot of people would benefit from seeing it being
Now.
a little older. Like, I would really want to go see it again.
Yeah, I saw it in 10th grade when it came to Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before Tenley came on, she gave us like her top songs from each of these shows, and from Dear Evan Hansen, I listened to You Will Be Found, which I believe is at the end of the first act.
Yes. The
Okay.
Act 1 finale.
Because I have also seen this musical. So,
You've seen a lot of musicals for someone who doesn't call themselves a musical fan.
well, it's like every time you go to New York, you have to see a Broadway play. Okay.
Yes, you do. It's
So-
very true.
Like, in the context of the play, the song is so horrible. Like, he's
Interesting.
pretending.
Yeah.
He's pretending that he did all this.
Oh,
At this
yeah,
point, I would have given up the scheme because basically he Evan Hansen, like, it's a long story, but long story short, Evan Hansen pretends to be friends with this boy who committed suicide, and so then he has to like keep up this ruse, and then he like has a relationship with the boy's sister.
Yeah, I would say it's like important to note now that besides my love for Ben Platt and the actor, the character himself is very, very flawed. Like, I think it's not really something that should have been as like glorified as it was in my mind in the 8th grade. Like, lying to literally everyone.
It was glorified, but I liked that it's kind of like an unreliable narrator.
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
true.
That does make it interesting.
It also came out around the same time as 13 Reasons Why. So like the topic of suicide was very like prominent in society.
That's true.
I don't know if they handled the suicide part correctly though.
Because I think that's a difficult topic to handle, and media isn't doing it justice, I guess.
I mean, like, okay, 13 Reasons Why aside, didn't like the show, didn't watch it.
No, I didn't like that.
But
I did watch it.
Like, I don't know, in the musical they seem to kind of just be like, oh, and he died. Like, it wasn't, and it focused much more on Evan's reaction to his suicide.
No, more Evan's need to get in with the family, which was really
thinking back, it's very weird.
The song that bothered me the most in that musical is the one with the father when he tries to replace the dead son.
Yes. Him trying to replace Connor is very, very weird, and I think that I don't know. It's very, I guess they were trying to do what Hamilton did with a small cast, which makes sense in the context of the musical, because you don't really need an ensemble. You don't really need some of the stuff that a lot of like more mainstream musicals did. And I think what they did do well was they were trying to kind of play to technology and play to like the current world, which I think
social media.
Like, the set did a good job of that. I don't really know if the characters did
they win a Tony for that set?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, the set was really nice, but I feel like, I mean, obviously, because it's a Broadway show, the set can kind of be its own character, but I feel like the actual, like, writing and acting didn't really have to do a lot with what was happening.
No, that's very true. I think they just kind of were like, oh, this is such a, like, we can play to social media, we can just use that aspect, so they kind of use it for that.
I think, actually, if you saw Mean Girls, they used social media 10 times better than Dear Evan Hansen did. Even though the Mean Girls soundtrack is only subpar, the show was very well done.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, do we think it deserves the hype or not?
I personally think no.
Interesting.
I didn't like the show when I saw it.
Yeah.
My little sister tried to leave it after Act 1.
Yeah, I didn't like the show either. Like, we saw it, and people were like, oh my goodness, it was so good, but we were like, I've seen other ones that I enjoyed more.
Yeah, I think I really like upbeat musicals, and I like ensembles and big dance numbers and stuff, so I think personally that didn't really draw to me there. But I do like You Will Be Found is a great song. We sang it in chorus once.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a little conflicted because I'm biased. I mean, I saw this with the original cast too, which was great. Like, Ben Platt
you need to take me next
show.
time.
Yeah, Ben Platt makes this show. I think if he wasn't there, I would have had a very, very different experience, just because the way he played the role was just insanely good. Like, it's exactly what I guess like the directors were going for.
Yeah,
but
I think is just amazing.
I don't really know if it deserves the hype. I would be interested to see if they honestly made it into more of a play. I think it would be really interesting, just because if they could like delve into the actual like lines and the context more, because the context is so glossed over. Like, I've honestly got a lot of feedback from like my other friends that people are like confused by the actual plot of the play, which is just, it sets up kind of a bad experience for like either a younger audience or just a more uninformed audience. So I definitely think that could be interesting.
Evan's whole backstory with like depression and stuff isn't really delved into, and I think if it was, it would help build the musical better.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot is just they threw a lot in there, which like they were trying to like raise awareness for a bunch of topics, which I think is a good thing, but you kind of have to be cautious of not giving the full context, because I think that's kind of dangerous to a vulnerable audience.
They tried to focus on a lot of different aspects, but if they had just chosen one and like really focused on that, I think it would have been developed better.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really into this Dear Evan Hansen as a play idea.
Yeah, I just think it would be super cool, because the music is great, and I'm not saying it wasn't well written, because it was, but I just think if people understood the context, like I love the show blindly and I didn't even really know the context. I think that like if the topics were more touched upon, then it would reach like an audience in a better way.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, and Tenley, would you like to tell us your third musical?
Yeah, so the third musical I want to talk about is Waitress.
This is one of my favorites.
This is such a good musical, honestly. I wasn't really like a huge fan of this before I saw it. My mom just took me. I think in 9th grade, we went to Boston and saw it. I didn't see it on Broadway.
I went to Boston and saw it too.
And I was really, really surprised by how like well done it was, I guess. I think it started off as something I was like, oh, this is just a normal like musical. It has the ensemble, has a cute set, has some good singing.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like big in the first few minutes, but then looking back now, there were a lot of really deep topics that were explored there that were kind of not glossed over as Dear Evan Hansen ones, but I think they were strategically made to be like not light, but somewhat like hidden, like you were supposed to have to figure it out, and I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, also it's like based off of a movie, I think.
Yeah, so the plot of this is that it's a woman working in a diner, I believe, and
she's really good at baking pies.
Yes, and she has an abusive husband, but she like stays with him, and then she meets this doctor.
Well, no, she gets pregnant
and she didn't want the baby
because abusive husband.
Yeah, because of the abusive husband. So then she goes to the doctor, and then she starts having an affair with the doctor.
I feel like that was a little messed up, that whole concept.
Yeah. Okay, but basically she ends up keeping the baby and leaving the husband, and then like following her baking desires.
The best part personally for me about this show is the side characters.
Yes, I agree with that.
Like the I forgot her name, but her like little diner friend and her new boyfriend,
her new romance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super good. I
So
definitely
good.
agree with that. I think that, I don't know, I think I was definitely too young to understand this one, like the like main topic behind it. I remember like there's a lot of like funny jokes. It's more adult, not adult, but
it is more
based.
adult.
Like my mom loved it.
My mom was
got
obsessed.
every joke. My mom cried at the song I suggested was "She Used to Be Mine," which is I think
So
one of the
good.
best songs in the musical. So
I've never seen Waitress, but I listened to this song. It was a little slow for me, and while I am a fan of piano ballads, I don't know, it didn't do it for me. I liked the content because I liked that because it was still very specific to the play, but anyone who was listening could have related to the lyrics.
I think for me, I like that song, but my favorite one is When He Sees Me.
that is also one of my favorite songs.
And so if you're on TikTok, it's like, when he sees me, da 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 da. It's like a TikTok sound now.
Okay.
But it's like so funny and upbeat, and it's like, it adds a little bit of comedy. Like, I think the thing Waitress does the best, that Dear Evan Hansen probably needed more of, is like, they had some comedy and like fun numbers in there, which like made it very engaging.
Yeah, I think the contrast between like the deepness of, I guess, the song I recommended and a lighter song is definitely very wanted by an audience, because not every like person going in there was going to be like, oh, I want something really deep. You know, like it plays to a lot of different strengths, and I really like what Delia said about you can listen to the song not in a musical context and still relate to it. I think that's really important. I
think that has to do with the fact that all of the songs were written by Sarah Bareilles. Most of the songs,
I'm pretty sure. Almost.
She wrote most of them and she produced the musical too.
Yeah.
Which is just
and like Sarah Bareilles obviously like knows how to write a song.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
So I definitely think that like she helped contribute to how
her
well
own
it was
music
received.
style really like came through that song, I think. And I really liked, it was a pretty good set. Like, it wasn't anything special for the set, but it didn't need anything, you know? I think it wasn't really trying to, like, fix all the problems of society, which I think was kind of good for the show. I think sometimes in Broadway, they keep trying to, like, just make everything better and, oh, this is going on, so we have to play it to this audience and things like that. And I think Waitress did a good job of, like, creating its own little world. And I think that it's still related to other people, especially with She Used to Be Mine and, like, the abusive plotline. And I think that was definitely prevalent, and it's still prevalent. And I just think that they didn't overdo it, where I would say Dear Evan Hansen may have been trying to grab too many topics. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so do you think it deserves the hype or not?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I would say that I think
I don't think it had a lot of hype.
I don't think it had hype.
So I feel like
I think it needs more hype.
It was underhyped.
Compared to things like
go stream Waitress.
Yeah.
Yeah, compared to Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen, it's not one of those big name things.
No.
And maybe that is because it's not written all in a rock, like in the opera ballad, or did all the social media things. But I don't think something needs like all those aspects to be considered something great. And I think that's very interesting with Broadway too, like kind of everyone's gravitation towards like what's either most relevant or most new. With like, I'm not arguing that Lin-Manuel isn't really smart by thinking of Alexander Hamilton. I just think that sometimes things that are overcomplicated tend to get more hype because there's more aspects of things that like anyone can pull from, I guess.
Yeah.
But Waitress didn't really need that, I don't think.
I don't think it needed that at all.
Yeah. I mean,
good.
I just listened to that one song, but I like know the plot. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really see the hype, but I know that Sarah Bareilles is really talented. So if she had anything to do with it, I'm sure that it's great.
Totally. Yeah. And
Okay.
also, I was surprised that because Sarah Bareilles was a name on it, it didn't get as much hype.
Right, yeah, that's very interesting.
Okay,
too.
so to wrap things up, we have a few questions.
Oh, yes.
for Tenley.
I'd love some questions.
All right. So, what is it about Broadway that draws you to it?
That's honestly a great question. I think as a kid before I came to NCS, I was really shy and like scared of singing at all. And I think my mom took me to Wicked in like the 5th grade, and I just loved it. I thought it was really creative and really inspiring. I don't really know. I think it was just something so different from who I was that I gravitated towards it. And I think that's kind of a common theme in like, I wish that I was more outgoing. And I think something like not being afraid to like portray these crazy characters, have these crazy costumes and things like that was definitely something that drew me in.
Good. Okay, that kind of goes into our next question, which is, did you like Broadway before you started acting and being in plays?
Yes, I definitely did. I think in the beginning I was a little hesitant to be kind of that like crazy. I think theater kids get a bad rep for being like weird and out there, and I think people are just trying to express themselves honestly. And I was kind of scared of that, honestly. Unfortunately, like in the past I cared so much about what other people thought of me. I feel like that's a normal thing that everyone goes through, like especially middle school.
True.
But I was really glad that it really broke me out of my shell, and I've made so many friends. Something Anna and I have talked about before is like, you can walk into a theater thing or a thing with theater people and everyone just accepts you in a way that is so
care
different
at all.
They don't care about anything, which is so great.
And they're so individually themselves.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I've ever really seen that anywhere else to the extent.
Neither.
Like, if you go to a play rehearsal or something like that, everyone will talk to you. Everyone just doesn't care about, like, cliques or, like, the stupid things that you should care about. Like, no one cares.
And, like, they'll tell you if they don't like you.
Yeah.
Like,
they're
straight up. It's, like, it's such a different world.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think Broadway actors deserve more money, fame, like celebrities in TV shows? And I feel like some mainstream ones, like Barrett Wilbert Weed, Ben Platt, Laura Bell Bundy, Jonathan Groff, and Lee Michelle, they're like famous, but they had something else on top of it. Like they had TV shows or like Instagram influencers or like a YouTube channel. And I feel like that's why they're more mainstream. But do you think like they deserve more?
I definitely do. I think people don't really understand how taxing it is to do a show like that 7 times a week. You're singing your heart out for one performance, never mind literally 7. It's crazy how much work goes into that, and I think that it really should be paid more. Like, it really makes me sad. I've been seeing a lot of stuff about with Broadway closing because of COVID. I mean, things have just been so terrible,
and like they're so dependent on those shows because if you're a Broadway actor, like your voice is like so kind of like they've fine-tuned it to be for a Broadway audience. So for COVID, when everything closed, like they lost their only source of income.
Also, something so crazy about Broadway is what happens is 2 weeks. You get casted, and then you have 2 weeks to learn the entire musical, the entire show, and then you're put on stage. 2 weeks.
Not everyone can do that. That's you have to be so smart and so just ready to go. Like, you have to be up so much studying lines, studying stage movements, stage directions, and things like that. Like, I compare it to kind of filming for a TV show, and if you've been in the same character for however many years, that's very different than you getting thrown into this random role this week and this week and this in another month. Like, you have to be so flexible, and you should get paid equally. Like, you should be paid for that.
And people are double cast. Like, they have to learn like 6 different parts in case somebody's sick and they have to go on. It's so incredible.
Yeah, like if you have a regular TV show, you're one set persona. Like, you have to change so much depending on your role, which is so much work. And I don't think people really care, which is so unfair. Like, I mean, you said it yourself, like, oh, the big thing to see is New York is like to go to a Broadway show, and it's really just to say that you went. It's like, if it's not Hamilton or like anything huge and you're just going for like some random thing, like, it's not about the name, it's not about anything else, which is kind of unfair to like someone who's been like really excited to play this role for like 1,000 years, and you just go like, oh yeah, I saw a Broadway show. It just kind of blows my mind.
And it's so hard to get casted too. It's like incredible. If you were to be on Broadway, what part and what show would you want to be?
Ooh,
I know mine.
That's such a good question. Oh God.
Well,
I'd say, depending on the theme, I'd say Eliza and Hamilton is probably a big one I would want to do, just because I think that was huge for me in listening to the soundtrack. I think that Philippa Soo just did a phenomenal job in that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
Incredible.
everyone is great in that cast, but I would argue that she was one of the best in that musical, and just they could have done so much more with her, which is something like I'd almost want to like, I would definitely want to rewrite that and kind of see all like the different things they could have done.
Yeah, what if it was like from Eliza's perspective?
Yeah, it would have been just so interesting. And I think that she didn't even have lines, but like I remember at the very end of the show, like she just like screamed, and it was so weird and uncomfortable, but it was just so good. And like I remember, I still think about her performance when I saw it to this day. And like I don't even know if I can relate to Eliza Hamilton, but I think playing her would just be so interesting.
Yeah. Like for me, I would want to play Elle Woods in Legally Blonde, the musical, which is such an underrated musical too.
Very good, very good.
I feel like it's my favorite musical of all time, but like that'd be crazy. I can't dance, so I would never get casted as it. But that like amazing. I would kill to do that.
Okay, do you have any last thoughts or takeaways about Broadway?
Last takeaways, I guess, is just to appreciate the musicals that aren't Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen, which is something I'm trying to work on, I guess. When I was new to it, I think that's something easy to do, is just to latch onto the thing everyone's comfortable talking about. But I think there are just so many different shows, which is the best part about Broadway, and I really encourage people when COVID gets better and shows start opening up again to go.
I think Hamilton just reopened on Broadway.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I just saw something that was like this week Hamilton. Like,
yeah,
Broadway's
that's great.
reopening.
I just think a takeaway is definitely to think about like appreciation for those actors. Like, I don't think people understand that even to be in the chorus or the ensemble, which is a small role in like the big scheme of things, you have to be so talented. People get cut from those auditions like nobody's business. It's so hard to even make it on the stage. And I think that when you go see a musical and you're seeing people, I guess, that you consider to be in the background, you just kind of have to remember how hard they work to be on that stage for you.
Yeah, if you see the musical chorus line, it's like about that. And you can like even listening to opening number, and the director like cuts people in seconds. He's like 24, you're out. 32, out. It's like insane. You like spend weeks training for this audition, and then you go in, and then they're like, oh, you have like you're too short, get out of here.
I think about, there's a diner in New York that has people who are either like, have been on Broadway or are currently like searching for jobs on Broadway, and I remember going
Stardust?
Yeah, Ellen Stardust Diner, and I remember going and just hearing the talent of people who aren't even selected is insane. Like there are so many talented people that are never going to be Ben Platt or Lin-Manuel or things like that, and it's just crazy. So I think a big takeaway is to just go and appreciate like the love these people have for wanting to entertain you.
Yeah,
I agree.
Do you have like any like shows or songs to recommend to people?
Okay, this is I don't know, this is not everyone's cup of tea, but I would definitely recommend Les Mis. I don't know. I love Les Mis. I think it's so good, and I think it's definitely like very confusing, as like I really liked it in like the 8th grade when I did it, and I think I definitely didn't understand that. But if you're into kind of the sung through thing like that Hamilton did, Les Mis definitely does that too. And I think that, I don't know, I don't even have just one set one to recommend, because you could find so many different ones. I think that just
there's something for everyone.
There literally is something for everyone.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Tenley, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you all got more educated on Broadway. I definitely did. As you could probably notice, I was a little bit fish out of water this episode. But I definitely learned a lot from these two. And that's it for this week on
Pop-arrazi.